Timeless Tales, a tale from the Jataka, the birth stories of the Buddha, the merchant of Seri. Long before the great spice roads mapped the world, in the days when trade meant walking from village to village with a cart full of household wares and a hope for honest dealings, two merchants set out from the city of Seri on the same early morning. Their names were Vara and Kuta. They were rivals, not enemies. They had grown up on the same street, apprenticed under the same guild master, and absorbed the same first lesson, that the price of a thing is whatever someone will pay for it. But in the years since, each had drawn a different conclusion from that single fact. Vara had decided that honesty, practiced with patience, was the most durable strategy a merchant could employ. Not from virtue alone, though he was not without virtue, but because he had observed over many seasons that traders whose word held its value from one market to the next were the ones who built something that lasted. Trust, he had found, was a currency that did not devalue with use. The more honestly you spent it, the more of it you had. Kuta had decided that anyone who believed this had not yet been desperate enough. In every exchange he held, there was a winner and a loser, and a clever man arranged to be the one who came away with more than he had arrived with, by whatever means the situation offered. He was not cruel. He simply believed that the world rewarded the attentive over the scrupulous, and he intended to be attentive. The road stretched before them in the morning light, and the day had not yet decided which of them was right.
I will take the North Lane today. I have not traded there in 3 seasons, and there may be a household that needs what we carry. Besides, I would rather find the people who need what I have than persuade people who do not.
They parted at the crossroads, Kuta turning south toward the larger compounds, Vara heading north along a narrower lane shaded by old palms. The midday heat had settled over the village like a cloth. Dogs lay in the dust beneath compound walls. Smoke drifted from a cooking fire that had not yet gone out inside one of the older houses, a small place set slightly apart from its neighbors, with a cracked step, a carefully swept yard, and a few clay pots stacked with the neat economy of someone who owned very few things and looked after each of them. In the shade of the doorway, an old woman sat sorting dried lentils into a clay jar. She looked up at the sound of Vara's footsteps without alarm. She had the calm of a person who has long since decided what sort of people are worth her attention and who can recognize them at a distance.
Tell me, that house at the end of the North Lane, the old widow who lives alone, has she anything left worth selling? She has been here a long time. Old households always have something good buried under the ordinary things, something they have stopped seeing because it has been there so long.
Good woman, may I ask you something? This bowl on your shelf, how long has it been in your family? The widow thought for a moment. My husband's mother's bowl, she said. We cooked rice in it my whole married life. It is a plain thing. Is there something wrong with it? No, said Vara quietly. Nothing at all is wrong with it. That is precisely what I needed to understand. I will need to go back to my cart. I will return before the evening.
The bowl had been sitting on the kitchen shelf for longer than the widow could account for, used and then not used, kept more from habit than intention. She had never thought to question what it was made of. It was the bowl. It had always been there. Vara had turned it in his hands with the careful attention of a man who has spent his life learning to see what things actually are, beneath what they appear to be. He ran his thumb along the inner base, feeling the density, the weight that was wrong for copper, subtly and unmistakably wrong. He held it up to the light coming through the doorway and watched the way the surface responded, not with copper's warm absorption, but with something that held the light for a moment, as if considering whether to return it. He set it down, pressed his knuckle gently to the rim, listened. Gold, pure gold, blackened by decades of cooking smoke and daily use, so familiar to the hands that held it that no one had thought to ask what it was made of. His cart held perhaps 1/4 of its value, perhaps less. He could have said nothing. He could have offered her a length of cloth and called it generous. She would have accepted. She had no way of knowing otherwise. He could have walked back to Seri that evening with a fortune, and told himself he had simply been paying attention. He set the bowl down carefully, the way you set down something you intend to return to, and he went to get what he actually owed her.
Copper, you say? Let me have a look. Yes, quite worn, you can see. The color is completely gone from the rim. In truth, it is worth very little at this age. I would be doing you a favor taking it off your hands at all. 2 silver needles and a pot of good salt. That is more than a fair price. More than most would offer, I think you will find.
The first merchant who came today said the bowl was worth more than he carried. He went to fetch the proper amount and told me he would return before dark. You have come now to tell me it is worth almost nothing. I am an old woman, but I am not a confused one. I will wait for the first merchant.
I have brought everything I carry, every coin on my cart. It is still less than the bowl is worth, but it is all I have today, and it is given honestly. When I have sold it, I will send you the remainder. You have my word on that, and my word is the only thing I trade in that I do not put a price on.
The widow accepted. She received what Vara offered with the quiet dignity of a person who has long been accustomed to asking only for what is fair, and who is, accordingly, always slightly surprised when it arrives. She made tea. They sat for a moment in the shade of the doorway before Vara rose to leave, the bowl wrapped in cloth and tucked under his arm with the careful reverence of someone carrying something more valuable than its appearance suggested. Kuta had been watching from the far end of the lane. In the length of a single breath, he understood what had happened and what it meant for him. He stood very still for a moment, doing an arithmetic that grew less bearable the longer he worked at it. Then he walked to the river at the edge of the village and threw his entire cartload of goods into the water, the needles, the salt, the cloth, the small ceramic bowls, one at a time, with the methodical fury of a man who needs to put the evidence somewhere. Then he walked back to Seri with nothing, and told himself the world was full of luck, and tomorrow would be different. Vara had the bowl tested by a goldsmith in the city. What he received for it built a trading house with a courtyard and 3 storerooms. And in the months that followed, without telling anyone, he arranged a second payment to the widow, the full difference between what he had given and what the bowl had been worth. He did not consider this generosity. He considered it completing what he had started. In his accounting, a transaction was not finished until both sides of it were honest.
A fair trade is not a loss that has been divided equally between 2 people. It is what is left when neither person has needed to lie.
Kuta traded for many more years after that day. He had the skill for it, and the world has always provided buyers and sellers. But he never built anything that required trust, and so he never built anything that lasted. He grew sharper and lonelier in equal measure, and he stayed poor in the way that matters most, in the accounting of what others would risk on his word. Vara's trading house outlasted him by 2 generations. The golden bowl passed out of family memory, but the habit did not. There is a bowl in every one of our lives that we have been told is copper. The data we generate each day, our location as we move through cities, our pauses over particular images, the purchases we almost make, the searches we run at 3 in the morning, the precise weight of our attention as it settles on one story and not another. This data is worth, in aggregate, hundreds of billions of dollars each year to the companies that harvest it. This is not speculation. It is the declared revenue of the world's largest technology businesses. And yet the exchange they offer us mirrors Kuta's with a precision that is almost architectural. What you have here is worth very little, they say. Take the service for free. It is, if you consider it honestly, an extraordinary act of generosity on our part. The mechanism that makes this possible is not a lie in the narrow sense. It is an information asymmetry, the same one Kuta carried into that widow's house. The engineers who built the real-time bidding network, who designed the attention graph, who run the data marketplace, they know, with extraordinary specificity, what your attention is worth to an advertiser at 4 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. You almost certainly do not. You were given a simpler account. The service exists because we care about connecting people. The bowl, you were told, is copper. It has always been copper. There is no reason to wonder otherwise. What is surrendered in this exchange is not immediately obvious. It begins with convenience, small, reasonable, easy to accept. But the compound effect is harder to name. A slow narrowing of the sense that your choices are genuinely your own, rather than shaped by a system that has learned, from billions of hours of human behavior, which image will make you pause, which story will keep you from setting down the device, which gap it can quietly suggest and then fill. The bowl becomes gold only in the hands of someone who knows what gold is. There is a version of this story where the honest merchant arrives, where the platform that tells you clearly and directly what your attention is worth, that compensates you fairly, that completes the transaction without deception, builds the kind of trust that lasts for generations. We are still early in the day. The North Lane is long. The widow in the story waited for the merchant who was coming back because she understood that the first offer had been honest. She was right to wait.
Honest dealing is not a cost to the trader. It is the compound interest of trust, paid out across a lifetime. The merchant who completes the transaction fairly, even when no one is watching, is building something that outlasts the single exchange. In the age of the attention economy, the most common form of this deception is the service that tells you what you offer is worth nothing, while harvesting it quietly for the benefit of others. The honest merchant is rare. But the one who waits for them and knows them by their returning has already understood the most important part of the story.
Timeless Tales by AmtocSoft. A new tale every day. Subscribe and walk with us.